think the tank junglers are a little stronger than they should be in comparison to the others now.
Irene the Prophet was truly ahead of his time. Hello everyone, welcome to patch rundown 5.9. If you haven't yet, somewhere look at the patch notes. It's probably important. You'll need it for this discussion for sure. I have with me now Bradford, certainly to you, Wenban, champion designer, and Riot Jag, aka Jeevan Sidhu, to talk over the changes. Guys, thank you. So brief me. I've been at a time capsule since 5.6. They don't let me leave here. How has the outside world been with Cinderhulk?
So we like what Cinderhulk has done for the League of Legends meta overall. Now that you can have tanks in the jungle, it has had spiraling effects on all the other lanes. Now you have different classes of ADCs that are really powerful. Graves has kind of given way to Lucian, for example, to some extent, because he has better sustained damage against tanks. Top laners can be fighters, can have damage, they can be Vladimir. The entire game is more interesting now, I'd say, as a result of having different options in the jungle. And the issue with this is that we think that instead of being another option to, say, warrior, Cinderhulk is now just the option. It has a lot of things on the item that we like. We like the scaling tankiness, that's cool. We like the clear speed, that's great. Burning nerds while you're invulnerable, not as good. We think the PvP damage is a little askew on this item, and we probably don't think that's appropriate for a tank class. And I think Brad's talked a lot about how that seems to be a mismatched strength.
Yeah, definitely. I think the sort of cost you pay from having the much more reliable late game scaling on Cinderhulk vis-a-vis an item like Warrior, out of whack. You really have to take advantage of a very small window to make Warrior work right now. Mm-hmm. With these changes, all of that changes. I also think that you talk about how the changes cascade through the game. You're probably going to see with this, still the great structured fights that a tank-focused metagame yields, but the damage payoff is going to come more from protecting backliners, squishier damage dealers, rather than just relying on sort of running over them with Sunfire effects. I'm really happy to play it. I mean, we've been playing with it internally, and I'm really enjoying it.
Right, yeah, I mean, tanks will actually be in the front of the line tanking damage, not the back of the line being the damage threat, the tanky assassin guy in the back line now.
Yeah, and the damage dealing tanks like Sejuani still deal a lot of damage, right? That's just on her kit.
Right, yeah, I mean, I think when the balance team needed to look at Cinderhulk, we saw that while it was being used by Sejuani and Gragas a lot, it was also being used by Nautilus or Scion or Zac. It was even being used by Vi or Rek'Sai sometimes, which to us, that says that the major common problem here is Cinderhulk, that the item is probably a little too general purpose and just overall a little too strong for what it does. We could have taken the opposite approach, which is to say, okay, let's look at Sejuani and Gragas and bring those guys down a little bit. But I think it would have been inevitable that we would look at Cinderhulk, and then the bottom line for those guys is they get double nerfed if we look at them first. So we wanted to kind of normalize the baseline for what a jungler can do a little bit, bring back Cinderhulk down to, say, warrior level. We might need to do some work to bring up Magus and Devourer. And then we could really evaluate if Sejuani, who is banned in 90% of our games, is the actual problem, or if she just uses that item really well.
Right, so another instance of people kind of being burned down, as you say, top lane Smite, right? We're seeing a lot of people take Cinderhulk and Skirmisher Saber. It's pretty new. A lot of people out there think it's pretty interesting. What are your feelings on it, Brad?
I think it feels novel, and it generates a lane with a completely different flow to it. It's more or less a dead summoner spell for the early parts of the game in a 1v1 scenario, but it offers the player using it a lot of ability to control Scuttle Crab, to leave the lane and farm. At the same time, Skirmisher is just so dominant once it turns online. There's really no opportunity to fight that champion because of the ammo count nature of Smite and just the duration of Skirmishers. What is it, 6 seconds?
Yeah, 6 seconds. Yeah. On a 2 charges, 15-second cooldown, 6 seconds each. I think it's really cool that players found a way to innovate the game. As you're saying, it felt novel, I figured something out. This isn't, preseason 1 where people don't really know how to play the game. Smite leaking into top lane felt innovative and creative, right? So we like that aspect of it. And if it was really predominantly picked for reasons like you're talking about, like Scuttle Crab control, neutral objective control, enemy jungle control, if Smite was used for those types of purposes, I don't think we'd be upset about it. But as it is, it's essentially devolved into the best PvP option top lane, right? Smite is a mini ignite, mini exhaust, and it has a really, really low windows of vulnerability because of the cooldown and duration. And I think that's the point where we're like, well, I don't think this is really evolved into an interesting adaptation of top lane, but more a degenerate case of how you optimize it.
So what do you think we could do to maybe push it in the direction of allowing it to live in more of the subjective control world, right? Because it seems like that's what you're saying, you know, we're really in support of maybe taking 2 smites.
The way we could, I mean, there are ways in which we could push it into being more objective control centric, but I don't think that's our goal. I think we wanted to give interesting PvP options to a jungler. And the tension between, do I smite wolves for getting the vision buff or do I save it for a gank, is an interesting choice for a jungler. In top lane, there is no choice behind it, right? You don't have a lot of burden to use smite on anything other than the enemy champion. And so I think to push it in that direction, we'd have to put more of the value into objective control, but then that might be at the expense of junglers who should rightly be taking it.
Right. Well, so, you know, we've pushed the duration now to 4 seconds, right? Are junglers going to feel like this was just nerf for top lane, or was there an issue with the nature of skirmishing Saber in general that we felt we needed to hit here? Like, what is the story behind the nerf here specifically?
Right. I think for a long time we didn't really see people take skirmisher because they weren't sure of the power of it, aside from arguably somewhat degenerate cases like Warwick smiting you when he ults you and just wrecks you, right? And now we've seen skirmisher broadly adopted by a lot of champions, a lot of classes, I should say. I mean, tanks will take it, fighters will take it. It's useful. And after seeing it used a lot in the game, we can evaluate that the combat window it is always provided is probably too long. 6 seconds of having very low vulnerability to an enemy is probably just too long, right? Regardless, whether it's on the jungler or on the top laner. And we're aware it is going to decrease the power of a jungler taking skirmishers, but we think it's appropriate in the situation as well.
Brad, turning over to you, I wanted to move a little into some of the patch changes themselves. We have what I think are some pretty interesting changes for Akali coming up. When Akali last appeared in the patch notes, things didn't look too great for her. But it seems like we're giving her some tools right now that are maybe a little different than what players might expect. Can you run me through and kind of break down what these are going to do?
Yeah, these changes are super dangerous, but also super exciting. I think this gives Akali some tools she's never had. It also gives her a lot of choice in gameplay she's never had, which I think is something that Akali's needed for a really long time.
Yeah.
So what we see the live team doing is, E goes down to this 1 second cooldown, like you mentioned. It's finally a true energy dump, which is something we've been lacking on our energy champions for a while. And that really requires that the player get a sense for how long the encounter is going to go, particularly given how much energy the Q costs and then has the refund. Like, if you dump all your energy, you're not going to be able to use those Qs for a while. So I think that's really great decision making. At the same time, it lets her participate in the game in different ways. She can farm side lanes in the mid game much more quickly now. Jeevan was talking about donating her blue in the mid game to let her push even more effectively. So I think it opens up a lot of strategies for Akali. Particularly against teams against whom she really can't team fight very effectively, like double exhaust compositions, for example.
Yeah, and like Brad says, the alternate sort of split pushing strategy, maybe she rushes a Lich Bane instead of a Gunblade now, because she can clear waves, you give her a blue buff, and she works tower as well. It's an alternate way to succeeding as a Akali that isn't just, well, I got ahead, now I teleport to a team fight and reset on everyone. And like you mentioned, it adds decision points, right? You can fail as a Akali now. You can mismanage your energy. And that is, while to some people that is concerning because it might be a noob trap to dump your energy, it's a way to show people that you've mastered this champion and understand the energy flow of that champion. And so if that is a clear differentiation point of skill, maybe we can play that up a little bit even more and say, oh, like, we're going to give Akali some power, and we're going to give it here because you have to be a player who's earned it to get this power,
Going forward to another tuning point that we also have Annie changes this patch, right? Her basic attack is going down to 575. For a lot of people, that's scary, right? She's had 625 for a very long time. So, Jeevan, start it off for me and tell me kind of why are we taking this change now?
Right. So we felt like Annie's been a pretty strong champion for several patches now. She's seen some changes continuously over the past few months, and we think we want to preserve the really cool highlight moment of Annie jumping into your team and frying a squishy with her bear and AoE stunning you. And to preserve that, we feel like we need to take out some of her excess strength that she doesn't really need. So this is kind of like the Morgana change here. In this case, Annie's attack range is going down. We don't really feel like she needs it to be the signature Annie player who really is a threat to burst you. But it seems like it's very good at harassing enemy opponents out of lane, which is not really something we think she needs. Same with Morgana in this case. We like that she's a really strong CC machine. We like that she's a very interesting, powerful pick in Champ Select in terms of neutralizing powerful enemy CC teams.
Yeah, with Black Shield.
Right, with Black Shields, yeah. We don't think it's cool that she just wins lane for you and endlessly shoves the opponents at level 1, right? So we want to keep champions strong in what is cool about them and take away strengths that make it very hard to fight them.
Right. So, I mean, in general, Brad, like, what do you think the impact is of just lowering the basic attack range on this champion in general?
I think it's pretty dramatic. It's probably mostly going to affect side lane Annie, either top or support. You know, in top lane, I think when, you know, we've felt that she's abusive up there for a while. The player base we haven't seen her pick rate rise really dramatically, but I'm happy that the team is being proactive rather than waiting until the problem sort of festers. What it does, I think, is it makes your interactions with Annie more highly variable. She's going to be more reliant on using her Q. She's not just going to sit on Pyromania stacks, and that, you know, that's really interesting to me. Unlike mid lane, where if Annie is just sitting on those stacks, you can shove her in and force her to use her spells. That's super risky in the top lane, and oftentimes not a viable option in bot lane because champions are more single target basic attack focused.
Right. So, I mean, we have a whole bunch of changes this patch, right? But really, since about 5.5 with the introduction of Cinderhulk, we've been going pretty hard on the side of trying to make a lot more changes to the game in general, right? Like, you know, our kind of flagship buzzword for this at the moment is champion diversity, right? Are we still on this train? Like, where are we going? Are we still getting there?
We'd like to look at ways for keeping the game interesting and having different choices about what champions you play without necessarily focusing too hard on, well, this guy is really overpowered and we have to like hit him hard.
And also, as Jeevan mentioned, like viability is a really important part of actualizing like the diversity buzzwords that we sometimes talk about. It's irrelevant to give you options if a few of those are just clearly safer than the rest. And so the beginning of a season is a really fun time to be a player. Everything is in flux, and all of the strategies you developed last season, you have to sort of throw out or at least revalidate. The middle of the season is a really fun time to be a designer because things have sort of been solved, and your task is not to cast doubt on like everything the player has come to know over the course of the season, but to inject little bits of disruption that create new potential optimizations the player can sometimes run across or have to learn how to deal with. And I think a lot of the changes in this patch, like, you know, Akali is back from the dead, you know, changes to how Annie interacts with you in lane, changes to how Callista interacts with you in team fights, go to that.
Then we'd like to bring, say, Olaf back, who hasn't had a chance to shine in a long time. And, you know, the second we see him on Voyboy stream killing people, we'll pop him back down.
That's, well, yeah. Things that Voyboy succeeds with is generally the barometer of success for how we balance. Anyways,
no longer.
Yeah, no longer.
Don't play Akali on stream either, boy.
Yeah. No, stay out of playing Akali. All right, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to discuss the patch. The band is beginning to play me off, so for myself, Jeevan, Brad, and everyone here at the Patch Rundown crew, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.